Kelvin Helin, our guest, he is a lawyer and he writes books and he advocates for self-reliance.
Self-reliance,
in all communities. Self-responsibility, connection, all of the things that sound ideal. How to make it happen? Where to start?
Where to start? You have to start with the individual. When I wrote my first book, Dances with Dependency, and it was released, I got a call from an elder from somewhere up in the Kamloops area, from a little reserve. And this lady phoned me up and she said, I want to talk to you. I've read your book and I want to buy 50 books. And I was really curious as to why somebody would buy so many books from me. And so I asked her, I said, why do you want to do this? She said, you know, throughout my whole life, she said, I always thought there was something wrong with me or my status. Maybe it was the fact that I was a woman. Maybe it was the fact that I came from a small reserve. Maybe it was the fact that I was an Aboriginal person. And she said, I've been going through all of these things all my life, and I've been carrying this huge weight. And she said, when I read your book, she said, I clearly understood that we were put into this situation as Aboriginal people because of specific government policy, and I didn't need to carry that weight. So she said, I wanted to buy your book and give them to every member of my family so they understood the same picture. So people have to understand, you know, when I was a kid, I was brought up on a reserve, and I was like a tree in the forest, and I couldn't see the forest. And it's taken a lot of thinking, research, and writing this first book to be able to see the forest. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to paint the picture so everybody can see what the forest is, how we got here. And when you put it in terms of a long-term historical terms, what I talk about is the 10,000-year canoe journey. And in order to get Aboriginal people to understand and buy into what I'm saying, I said, look at where each of us come from. I'm Jim Shen, I'm from northern BC. We've been there for at least 10,000 years in the same place. And so the question that I asked everybody, and most tribes can say this across North America, the question that I asked is, how come it's been only in the last 9,600 years we've had all of these problems? Prior to this, for 9,600 years, we were completely self-reliant. We didn't rely on anybody. There was no transfer payments. There was no welfare. And our ancestors weren't laying on the couch eating potato chips waiting for a welfare check. So what was the difference? And so when you put it in that kind of context, it gets people thinking, well, you know, this is a short time period. How did this come about? And then they try to understand it. And then once they understand how we got here, then it's important for them to be able to have a picture about how to get out.
Because everybody needs a mentor. Everybody needs hope. You're a mentor to many, I know, but how you feel about this and how you write about this is controversial within the communities. Has to be.
I was told when the book, when I first circulated the manuscript to the book, that I was painting a target on my back because there's $10 billion a year going into what I call the Indian industry. And there's a lot of our own leaders who are making a damn good living off of the dysfunction. And then I had 32 letters of rejection from publishers. But fortunately, I'm a former commercial fisherman and a lawyer, so I have a very thick hide. I borrowed $100,000. I published the book. And what happened is that book is now a 7-time bestseller. It's the key text in just about every course on Aboriginal anything in colleges and universities and now high schools across Canada. So what's happened is it struck a chord with ordinary Aboriginal people. They're the people buying the book in general. And what they're basically saying is that what I've written about resonates with the reality of their experience.
And many of the young people, as you know, their parents were put into residential schools. Yes, the apology has been made, the damage tough to reverse, but we must move ahead, or all of us.
Well,
settle some of these treaties, settle some of the land claims.
Absolutely. There's a whole group and there's now an emerging group of young leaders and a whole group of young people who just have said, you know, we've heard about this all our lives, we heard about all these grievances, it's time to do something about it. It's time to do what the Maoris in New Zealand call going from grievance to development mode. And they say that the purpose of grieving is to be able to adjust to a trauma. So all of these things have happened to Indigenous people, and we've been in grievance mode. And the question we ask is who are we going to blame? And that's a useful question in grievance mode. But once you go to development mode, the only useful question is what are you going to do about it?
Of course, and as we watch what's going on with the pipeline, the Northern Gateway, the $5.5 billion pipeline, to be or not to be, it's not a Native question. It's a question for all of us to be for it or against it. The Gitxsan were in a little bit and now they're out, or do you know what's going on there?
Being in it a little bit is like being a little bit pregnant.
Yeah, right. 10%. No such thing.
Well, I think the issue is very complicated, and I think Enbridge as a company underestimated the complications of the Aboriginal issues in BC. You go into Alberta, you have 3 language groups. You come into BC, you have 32 completely language groups with a whole bunch of dialects, and even the communities in that dialectical group don't see eye to eye. And so, so what happened is I think Enbridge came in and they were a little bit, they underestimated the complexities, and they were a little bit tight-fisted with what they were promising. And in general, they got the backs of everybody up. And it's not that the Aboriginal people in northern BC are opposed to economic development. Like from a macro level, I can understand that pipeline is important to the future economics of Canada.
We all can.
On the other hand, the issue for local Aboriginal people is best stated, I think, the political scientist from UBC, Paul Tennant, said, in an immigrant-derived society, people in mainstream Canada have a hard time seeing the 10,000-year connection that Aboriginal people have to the land. That's a very, very deep, important thing. To most, it's an emotional bond.
You bet. And who do you trust? Do you trust Enbridge? Can they really do this without having a disaster? There's so much to go on.
It's a question where if you've been deriving your food source from the ocean or from somewhere along in your traditional territory, and somebody comes along and promises you a little bit of money, and a whole bunch of groups get 10% of the pipeline. Well, that's nothing to them, right? So on a balance, the risks are hugely outweigh the rewards, and so it's just not a good thing to do. If you asked your average Vancouverite if that pipeline was coming into Vancouver Harbour, whether that was a good deal, and those big ships had to navigate in all the ports, and they promised you that this was fail-safe and foolproof, what everybody would automatically think about is what happened with BP in the Gulf of Mexico, or this this Italian ship laying on the rocks
exactly.
in that little place called Gigolo.
Accidents do happen. I thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Kelvin Helin, lawyer and author.